Story 1, The Asylum Secret. The insane asylum was a place of shadows and secrets, where the whispers of madness echoed through the halls like the rustling of dead leaves. It was a place of ancient horrors and forgotten terrors, where the spirits of the dead mingled with the living like the wraiths of a nightmare. And there was one patient in the asylum who was more ancient than all the others, a figure of darkness and despair who had been there for longer than anyone could remember. His name was John, and he was a killer. John had been admitted to the asylum many decades ago, when the world was a very different place. He was a monster, a creature of darkness who had murdered countless people in the most brutal and gruesome ways imaginable. As I made my way through the asylum, I could feel John's presence lurking in the shadows like a predator waiting to strike. His eyes were like pools of darkness, his gaze filled with the same madness that had consumed him all those years ago. And then, I saw him. John was huddled in the corner of his room, his face twisted into a grotesque mask of rage and pain. He stared at me with a malevolent intensity, his eyes glowing with a demonic fire. As I drew closer, I could see the scars that crisscrossed his face and arms, a testament to the brutality that he had inflicted upon others. And then, I saw the gleaming metal of the knife that he clutched in his hand, a weapon that he had used to take so many lives. I tried to run, but John was too fast. He leapt up from his corner and lunged at me with a savage intensity, his knife flashing in the dim light of the asylum. And then, everything went dark. When I awoke, I was lying in a pool of blood, my body broken and battered. And John was standing over me, his eyes glowing with a demonic fire as he laughed in triumph. I was no longer a visitor to the asylum, but a victim, consumed by the darkness that had taken root in John's soul. And as I lay there, dying, I could hear the echoes of his laughter mingling with the whispers of madness that filled the asylum, a never-ending chorus of horror and despair. Story 2, Echoes of Madness. I shouldn't have come here. That's the first thought that crosses my mind as I step into the abandoned insane asylum. But I can't turn back now. I need to know what happened here, what made this place so infamous. The air is thick with the stench of decay and death. The walls are stained with decades of neglect and abuse. I can hear the drip 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 of water from the leaky pipes, and the sound of something moving in the shadows. I should leave, but I can't. The curiosity is too great. I step forward cautiously, one foot in front of the other, and soon find myself in a maze of twisted corridors and flickering lights. That's when I hear the screams. They echo through the halls, chilling me to the bone. The screams of the patients who were once trapped here, their minds twisted and broken by the cruel experiments of their captors. I try to push the images from my mind, but they haunt me. The spirits of the past are everywhere, their tortured moans and screams filling my ears. And then, suddenly, they are upon me. The patients of the asylum, long since dead, have risen from their graves to claim new victims. They are twisted and broken, their bodies and minds warped by the cruel experiments of their captors. And now, they want revenge. I run for my life, trying to escape the ghostly inmates of the asylum. But the maze of corridors seems to shift and change around me, the darkness closing in. And then I realize, there is no escape. The madness of the place has claimed me, and I am now one of its own. Forever trapped within its walls, forever a victim of its horrors. The asylum will never let me go. Story 3, A Journey Through Madness and Despair. I remember the day I stepped inside the old abandoned insane asylum. It was a gloomy day, the kind of day that makes you feel uneasy. The building stood tall and imposing, a relic of a time long gone. As I walked down the long hallway, I could hear the creaking of the floorboards beneath my feet, and I shuddered. The smell of decay and mold hung heavy in the air, and I couldn't help but wonder what horrors lay hidden in the dark corners of the building. As I made my way deeper into the asylum, I began to hear strange whispers coming from the shadows. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the voices grew louder and more insistent. They seemed to be coming from the walls themselves, as if the very fabric of the building was alive and speaking to me. I turned a corner and found myself face to face with a door that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. As I reached out to touch it, I felt a jolt of electricity shoot through my body, and I was thrown back against the wall. I scrambled to my feet, my heart racing, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. As I stood there, trying to catch my breath, I heard the sound of footsteps coming from the other side of the door. They were slow and deliberate, like someone was deliberately trying to intimidate me. I backed away from the door, my hands shaking, and stumbled into a room filled with old medical equipment and strange contraptions. As I looked around the room, I realized that I was not alone. The walls seemed to be closing in on me, and the whispers grew louder and more frenzied. Suddenly, a figure appeared before me, its face twisted in a grotesque grin. It was then that I realized the terrible truth about the asylum. It wasn't just a building filled with old equipment and abandoned patients. It was alive, and it was hungry for my soul. I ran as fast as I could, but the wall seemed to be closing in on me, the whispers turning into screams of madness. I stumbled and fell, my head hitting the ground with a sickening thud. As I lay there, bleeding and broken, I felt the darkness envelop me, and I knew that I was lost. The asylum had claimed another victim, and I was doomed to wander its endless halls for all eternity.